All right, good morning. We're going to get started here. We'll have the mayor first and then Chief Henry, and then we'll open it up for questions. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Oki, Ambawastich, Dadanastada, and Tanse. My thoughts at this time go out to the people of Jasper and the visitors who had to evacuate during a time of absolute devastation. Pictures of the fires and the damage that has been caused are absolutely gut-wrenching. I've reached out to Jasper Mayor Richard Ireland to offer any support that Calgary can lend. I was also encouraged to hear that 19 members of Canada Task Force 2 were deployed, I should say, last night. They will be part of the incident response support that's coming from across the province. Now, as you know, when the fire started, we opened up the evacuee reception center at Shoaldice Arena, located at 1515 Home Road. This was intended to assist people with things like accommodations, with pet support, health and hygiene resources when they arrived in this city. Last night, when I heard that some evacuees came to our city but did not get the normal warm Calgary welcome, I immediately reached out to Chief Sue Henry to understand the situation. She was already aware of what had happened and quickly reopened the reception center. To those evacuees who did not immediately receive assistance, I apologize sincerely. I can only imagine what it must have been like to have to rapidly evacuate and then drive 12 to 15 hours to show up here and be met with closed doors. While this was only the case for about 20 minutes, I can understand that it would have been heartbreaking. I have been reassured that the reception center will remain open for the next 48 hours so that anyone who is seeking refuge from the wildfires is immediately able to seek assistance. And I want to thank the team at Calgary Emergency Management Agency for addressing yesterday's short gap in service so quickly. We all remain committed to supporting the people who had to flee from Jasper. Calgarians are also known for their generosity, and that's just part of why I love this city. So I know many of you are interested in bringing donations for people who have had to evacuate. I would ask you to please refrain from doing that. Do not bring any donations to the reception center at this time. There is another method that you can follow to offer your support. You can use this email address, which is emergencysupportoffers@gov.ab.ca. Once again, if you would like to offer support, please use emergencysupportoffers@gov.ab.ca. I'll now turn things over to Calgary Emergency Management Agency Chief Sue Henry.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We know this is a very difficult time for Jasper residents and visitors and the thousands of people that are evacuated from their homes. Some absolutely devastating photos and videos are emerging from Jasper, and our thoughts are with all those whose properties, livelihoods have been damaged or impacted by this emergency. I would also like to acknowledge the first responders who are on site as we speak, continuing to work hard to manage the impacts of the wildfire and safeguard lives and property. This is what they do, and we're sending our thoughts and support to them as they battle this challenge. Here on the ground in Calgary, we continue to stand by and support our neighbors. Our reception center reopened for overnight access last night at 11 p.m. to prepare for any late arrivals. The previous night, we'd had nearly zero overnight visitors, so we had modified our hours to close earlier in the evening. However, with the fire reaching the town site last night, we were able to quickly adjust and reopen to any overnight travelers. As of this morning, Calgary has 465 evacuees that have registered and been accommodated through our reception center. The reception center is located at the Shoaldice Arena at 1515 Home Road Northwest. And if you are a Jasper resident and need accommodation, we know you are hurting right now. Please come down and we will make you feel at home and help you through those supports. Last night, the call for help came from the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, and we are answering. Canada Task Force 2 has deployed 19 personnel in support of the wildfires in Jasper at the request of the AEMA. This is a really diverse team. It includes emergency managers, paramedics, firefighters, fire chiefs, and police officers. And under the leadership of Deputy Chief Kobe Dewar as our task force commander, they will be serving in various emergency operations roles at the incident command post. Their role is to support the local authority, provide capacity and expertise in emergency response and emergency planning. We have sent enough personnel so that we can cover both a day shift and a night shift, and they will be working around the clock in support of this emergency. The team has also deployed with military food rations, at tents and sleeping bags so that they can be self-sufficient if needed. We know that the air quality conditions are unpredictable, so we have also sent our team with breathing respirator masks to ensure their safety, and they are traveling with an emergency room physician who is part of the team and will make sure that they have the right equipment for the conditions that they are going into. We have also sent CEMA's Mobile Command Center, which can function as a mobile workspace to support CANTF2 or any local authorities with additional space that people can collaborate and coordinate in. It's essentially a tiny emergency operations center on wheels. We are in constant contact with the team to determine any other needs that we may be able to assist with. A little bit about Canada Task Force 2 for you. Canada Task Force 2 is an all-hazards disaster response team. It's based out of Calgary, and it's dedicated to emergency response, incident management, urban search and rescue. The team is comprised of 165 disaster response specialists from around the province who maintain readiness to respond to a variety of different disasters, situations, as well as doing their full-time career. Their strength is really their diversity and their experience in previous evacuations, wildfires, and all different types of emergencies. This is a partnership between the City of Calgary, the Province of Alberta, and the Government of Canada. However, the team is owned and operated by the City of Calgary. Their resounding response to an emergency is always, how can I help? Where do you need me? And what can we do? I'm extremely proud of them. Their willingness to assist in any situation and the work they're preparing to do in Jasper is critical. Within minutes of putting the call out, our CANTF2 members responded with no hesitation. They dropped everything to deploy and help us do what we needed to do. Temperature-wise, here in Calgary, we will get a brief reprieve from the heat as we see some cooling temperatures. However, air quality continues to fluctuate and we do still have smoky conditions. Environment Canada's Air Quality Health Index indicates that Calgary is at a moderate to high risk today. So continue to take care of those who are most susceptible to health issues or those who have respiratory issues. Keep checking in on people to see if they need extra assistance. Keep your windows closed. Reduce your strenuous outdoor activity, particularly if you have young children, you are elderly, pregnant, or have heart or lung issues. If you are finding you are struggling, please talk to your doctor. Also consider spending time in some of our cooling locations that are available on calgary.ca. These tend to have additional air-conditioned and filtered air spaces, and it might be a great break for you. So again, this is available at calgary.ca/heat. We know Calgarians are generous, and we want to help our neighbors who are impacted by the Jasper wildfires. Please continue to check the province's website for recommended organizations to donate to, or find a local campaign that you would like to support. Please do not bring donations to the reception center in Calgary. We are not set up to take these donations to get them to those who may benefit the most. We also know that folks may be feeling overwhelmed by images that they are seeing on social media or by the news. Our partners at 211 are available for anyone who needs additional support. Just dial 211 and they will connect you with the best support that is able to assist you. What we can do right now is be a good neighbor and send all of our thoughts to those who have been impacted. I'm now happy to take any questions.
Chief, I know you said, you mentioned that last night the Shoallice Arena was closed only for about 20 minutes. We had a reporter there last night, and for more than 2 hours, people came to that place and were turned away, some of them in tears, obviously. Can you help me just close that gap?
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday, the gap in service was very, very short. So what the initial plan was for yesterday, based on the night before, was to have the center open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We still had a ton of people out there at 5 p.m., so we were continuing to allow people in and process those people. Those people were coming in until about 10:15 when our folks left. At that time, we were able to see that there were still people coming. The conditions in Jasper changed last night, and I think it changed the dynamics of what people were expecting and how they were looking for longer term supports. So we were able to shift very quickly, get a night shift team to come in and reopen that center very shortly after.
So sorry, were there people that were inside that were, speaking with officials, getting help, but no more people were allowed in? Was that what was happening?
No, so we had a brief period of time. As I mentioned, it was scheduled to close at 5 o'clock. We had a brief period of time where folks would have seen the door saying the reception center is closed. Our staff immediately became aware that people were in the parking lot. They went and opened the door to allow them in. So they were inside the facility, still being in a lineup, essentially, still being processed and still being dealt with by our staff and supported. We did have that gap where our staff needed to be released. And as I said, it was about a 20-minute gap where we were able to reopen the center very shortly after. It's very, very difficult to predict when people are going to arrive in something like this. As I mentioned the night before, no one came. We had no one come to the center the night before, so we decided to do the shifting of hours. And we soon realized people were going to come last night. So we shifted again and were able to open very quickly to support them.
Is there anything you can tell us about what the demand for service was last night in terms of, were people literally just arriving in Calgary at that time, or was it the fact that the fire had swept into Jasper and that obviously might have prompted some people to reach out for supports?
It was a bit of a mix. So last night, I was down at the center myself last night in the early hours, and it was a bit of a mix of people. Some people had been spending time on a friend's couch in Calgary and were no longer able to do that and decided to come down at that point in time. Some people had been staying in campgrounds in various places in BC, and when they saw the fire escalate through Jasper last night, they decided to move from the campground and move into the Calgary area. So a real mix of people. It was about 65 to 85 folks that we brought into the center in the overnight hours. And every single one of those groups had very unique circumstances that had brought them to Calgary and very unique needs.
Chief Henry, we've heard reports that some people might not have been provided hotel rooms, some of the evacuees. What can you tell me?
Absolutely incorrect. Every evacuee that has come to us for a hotel room has been provided a hotel room and provided transportation to that hotel room. We still have an adequate supply of hotel rooms and are working our way through that, so that is incorrect information.
How many hotel rooms have been provided? How many people?
We have 465 individuals that have registered. Those folks have all had various needs. So for example, some of them may have ended up with 2 people into a hotel room. So I don't have the exact hotel numbers for you, but 465 people have been provided accommodation.
Chief, do you expect the numbers to increase now that the situation seems to have worsened?
That's a really hard thing for me to answer. It's very unpredictable with the amount of distance that folks have to travel to be able to come to Calgary. I don't know whether we're expecting 100 more people, 1,000 more people, or we've got what we have currently in Calgary. We have been in touch with everybody that we can make contact with. We've made contact with the various busing companies that are working out of Jasper to move folks around. We've been in contact with many of the employers to find out what they're doing with their staff and if there's any way we can support. So we're continuing to gather as much information, but I have no idea how to predict for you what will arrive in Calgary.
Calgary's the farthest away, I think, in terms of the center. Have you checked with, say, Grande Prairie and Edmonton to see how they're faring?
Yes, so we are in constant contact. There's a phone call every morning with the Alberta Emergency Management Agency to be in touch with all of our centers. It depends a little bit on the different road conditions. The way a lot of folks had to evacuate, they had to evacuate west, which actually brought them down into Kamloops, which ironically made Calgary one of the closer centers in the immediate hours following the event, but we do remain in constant contact with our partners across the province to make sure that we're all coordinated, we're all providing this relatively the same level of service and supporting each other as we work to support the citizens from Jasper.
One final question for me. Do you expect that there might be more task force members sent? You said there was 19, I think?
There was 19 sent this morning. They have just arrived on scene, so they're just receiving a briefing from the local authority and from the folks that are there. in the days to come, we will know more about what actually occurred, what the situation is, and how we can support. Because we have 165 members, we do have the ability to support further, but we really need to be asked, and we really need to let this process work itself through to understand what they need on the ground before we answer whether there'll be additional people sent.
Chief Henry, I understand obviously they just arrived there this morning. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what those task force members will be doing specifically? And does this wildfire situation differ at all from some of the other responses the Task Force 2 members have been sent to over the last several years?
Task Force 2 is such an incredible group of people, and they have had the unfortunate privilege of being involved in so many different events that have occurred across Canada, and that's what really brings the strength to them. Some of these team members have been in Fort McMurray for the wildfires. Some have been in Slave Lake for the wildfires, in Chuckegg in 2019, and really they bring a lot of experience. Every single situation is unique and brings some unique complexities to it. The teams that we have sent up are what's called incident management teams. Those incident management teams help a local authority bolster their resources to be able to do all of the different roles that you would normally see here in the Emergency Operations Center. So we've sent a highly trained team that's very, very flexible, because we often know what we go out the door with for positions isn't always what we end up needing for people. So we've got this great team that's flexible in what they'll do, but they will help the local authority in whatever way the local authority needs us.
And can you clarify as well, with the firefighters that were sent up there as part of Task Force 2, is that CFD, are those CFD members in apparatus, or is it separate equipment completely? How does that work?
They are two completely separate programs. So we do have some Calgary Fire Department members that are members of Canada Task Force 2. And when we deploy Canada Task Force 2, they step down from their role in Calgary Fire and become a Canada Task Force 2 member. So they're not up there in a firefighting capacity. They are up there in an incident management team capacity with Canada Task Force 2.
Speaking of the Calgary Fire Department, what indications has the Alberta Emergency Management Agency given about potentially sending firefighting resources at this point, given we're seeing in the images that came out and the updates we received overnight last night?
Absolutely. So we did receive a request from the Alberta Emergency Management Agency last evening to evaluate whether we could send municipal firefighting resources. Our Calgary Fire Department worked on that through the night last night, and unfortunately will not be able to send any additional municipal firefighting resources due to the availability of our apparatus. But we do know that around the province, many municipal fire departments have responded, and there are a lot of resources going into Jasper.
And is there any, can you elaborate more on the availability of apparatus and what that exactly means at this point?
We can follow up with you on that, but that would be a bit out of my scope in terms of specifics for the fire department.
Were there any lessons learned from the evacuees from Yellowknife in dealing with these?
Absolutely. Yellowknife was a very different population that came to the Calgary area. The biggest difference between Yellowknife and what we're seeing for Jasper is that our Yellowknife evacuees came by air. They needed a lot more supports when they arrived in the city, and a lot more coordination of various different support roles for them, whether that was mental health roles, whether that was Alberta Health Services supports. What we're seeing in the evacuees that are arriving now are typically a younger population that's working in Jasper that drove themselves here, and they need some accommodation and they need some other supports, but not to the level that we saw in Yellowknife.
I was going to ask about the number of tour groups go up on these bus rides up there. I mean, have you been dealing with any of those, or are the bus lines taken care of?
We have not, to my knowledge, dealt with any specific tour groups. We have had a few tourists that were in the area stop into the reception center, and we have been providing accommodation for them while they work to change their flights or redo their travel plans, but we have not worked with any specific tour groups.
How long do you think these supports will be required for the evacuees, given the gravity of the situation?
Difficult to predict. What we know now is these evacuation supports will be in place until the evacuation order is lifted for Jasper. The timing of that, I don't know that timing.
Chief, you mentioned that the center will be open for 48 hours continuously up until what point, at least at this point?
So that is starting this morning. So we will be open for the next 48 hours to allow for this a little bit of flexibility in terms of when people are going to arrive with the difficult prediction to be able to do that. We'll be continuing to reevaluate throughout that entire time period to see, are people still arriving? Are people still needing supports? And how do we morph those supports to make sure that we're giving folks what they need? So if we do end up changing those hours after that 48-hour period, we will do what we did yesterday and provide information through social media, through the city's channels around the hours of those centers.
So until, what, 8 o'clock Saturday morning at least at a minimum?
And what, today is Thursday? Yes, that's correct.
Do you happen to know what routing the CTF folks had to take? Because normally it's a 4-hour shot, but right now it's not.
So the Canada Task Force 2 folks went into Hinton to receive their briefing. So they traveled through Red Deer to Edmonton and then across to Hinton.
Can you also clarify who covers the cost for Task Force 2 and how that all works? And who's also, I guess, leading this? I know it's a different situation within the national park. Federal assistance is being brought in as well, but the province is involved. Clarify all that.
So in terms of on the ground, I wouldn't be able to provide information on how and who is authorizing what resources, but the Movement of Canada Task Force 2 is authorized by the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, and it's done at a full cost recovery. So it won't be any city dollars that do that. We prepare account coding, code everything to that, and we essentially send a bill to the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. In some circumstances, that bill is covered by the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, and in some circumstance, that's covered by the municipality that requested us. So it will be one of those two options, but it will not be the City of Calgary that covers the bill.
Maybe a question for the mayor. Have you talked to the Jasper mayor at all? Is there anything that the city on the political side can help with apart from emergency management personnel?
As you can imagine, Mayor Ireland is probably very busy understanding what needs his residents have and what he needs to do to support the evacuation. So I haven't had a chance to speak with him directly. I have communicated with him and indicated that if there's anything that's needed, we are here to help. So that offer remains open. As he's available to call me back, I'm sure he will, but I hate to impose on his time when he's looking after his people right now.
What other wildfire situations that are obviously not as severe as Jasper, but are closer to Calgary, say in Banff or Water Valley? Is there any other support that the City of Calgary can provide to those situations?
So we have been in constant contact with our partners. We also have a group called the South Central Emergency Management Group that comes together to talk about things that are happening in our region. So we have been in touch with all of our friends from those groups to see that, make sure that they have the support that they need, see if there's anything that we can do from a City of Calgary perspective, and ensure that we're all utilizing the resources in a coordinated fashion. At this time, we don't have any requests for assistance from any of those surrounding municipalities, but it is a situation of constant contact.
Given that some of these folks might be here for longer than they anticipated, is there any plan to expand the range of services, they might have access to, keep kids busy, that sort of thing?
We're going to continue to evaluate that. The reality with the population that we have that has evacuated, we don't have a large amount of children that have checked in with us as of yet. We mostly have that contingency of workers that were working in Jasper and that have been evacuated. So we'll continue to evaluate that as things progress, make the determination depending on the time length. But we definitely want people to leave Calgary knowing it's a wonderful city and knowing it's incredible people. And we want to do what we can to make sure that they have a safe, little bit stress-free visit to Calgary while all this is happening on. So we will continue to evaluate.
And what's the length of the deployment for the CTF2 members? Like, is it, do they go for a week before they might be relieved? How does that work?
That is correct. So they go for a 7-day working period. We put 1 travel day on either end. So they're gone out of the city for 9 days, and we'll evaluate once they've had a little bit of time on the ground, whether, as I mentioned before, whether there'll be the need to recycle that crew, but they do go for that 9-day period to allow them to travel on either end.
All right, anyone else? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.